What's good, 80 Brew, baby? What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back at home, Time Commander, back for another episode of $50 Upgrades, the show where I give you my proposed $50 upgrade for the Precon in question. And today, we are talking about the Jump Scare Precon, headed up by Zimone Mystery Unraveler, a simic human wizard that cares about landfall. Whenever a land comes in, we manifest dread if it's the first time it happened this turn. Otherwise, we can turn a permanent we control face up. To manifest dread, now look at the top two, pick one of them, put it face down as a 2/2 creature that can be flipped over any time for its mana cost if it's a creature. The other goes into your graveyard. Zimone's a deck that cares about getting things face down and flipping them up with her abilities. And that's what we're going to look to do in this upgrade. We're going to bring in some better creatures that can come in face down, some old ones from things like Murders at Karlov Manor and that have disguise, and some Wharf creatures. We're going to look at more ways to take advantage of landfall. Since we want to do it to flip up our creatures, we might as well put in landfall creatures that can take advantage of the lands coming in. As well as we're going to add some small ways to bounce things back to our hand. Let's say we manifest dread a spell that we can't flip over, obviously because then it won't become a permanent. So we want to bring it back to our hand, as well as just some generally other good stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through every add to the deck in alphabetical order. Then we'll go through all the things I removed. I'm only going to kind of pick and choose ones to talk about. I'm not going to talk about every card that I removed, but I will talk about maybe cards that maybe I might try to bring back in to take something else out, or maybe, things I regret taking out, things like that. I think it's good to still have a conversation about what I removed and why, but maybe, you can tell me what you think of in the comments about what you would have removed instead. For a $50 budget, let's get into it. Starting with the ads, we're starting with a big landfall payoff in Avenger of Zendikar. A 7-mana 5/5 that says when it enters the battlefield, we make a plant token for each land we control, and whenever a land comes in, you put a counter on each plant you control. AOZ is well known in the landfall world for being a way to make a bunch of plants and get a bunch of counters. It can seem like a little bit of a nombo, right? Because we don't want to put it in face down, because then when we flip it face up, it didn't actually technically enter. But that's where some of the ways of either bouncing them back to our hand, or even blinking them with other abilities, exiling them and bringing them back to the battlefield, can actually still help with a card like Avenger of Zendikar, even if we want to cheat it in with Zimone's ability. Bonnie Paul Clear Cutter from OTJ is a card I just really like for Simic Landfall decks. When it comes in, you make Bow, a legendary blue ox creature token that's a star, where star's the number of lands you control, can get very big. And then whenever you attack, you draw a card and can put a land from your hand or your graveyard onto the battlefield. I like this because this can get you another landfall trigger every turn, especially if we're playing a lot of the lands that sacrifice to go get others, like Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse are both in the deck. You could add Fable Passage to get another one, or Myriad Landscape. There's a ton of them that do that, and you could kind of take advantage of this, playing lands back out of your graveyard and making this happen again. Doppelgang is just a Simic card I really love. And in a deck like this, where a lot of our creatures aren't legendary but have really good effects like Avenger of Zendikar, and Doppelgang can also copy lands, this seems like a no-brainer. For each of X target permanents, so remember you pick a value for X and you pay each of the X has to be the same. For each of up to X target permanents, you're going to make X copies of that permanent. This is a brutal ability the more you put into X. Imagine making 4 or 5 Avenger of Zendikars, making 4 or 5 copies of your lands and getting that many landfall triggers. There's so many ways to take advantage of Doppelgang that I just think it makes sense because it targets all permanents and not non-land permanents. Yes, Doppelgang isn't going to be good in the first few turns of the game, but I think once you flip a few of the right things over, Doppelgang becomes really good and can be really fun to figure out what you can do with it. Dourport Mage from Bloomborough just makes a ton of sense. Basically, for 2 mana and tapping it, you can return a creature you control to its owner's hand. Basically, you can return one of your face-down creatures back to your hand. Let's say I manifest dread a spell, or a creature that I really want to cast instead of flipping face up like Avenger of Zendikar. Or let's say I manifest dread a land that for some reason I need that landfall trigger, so I want to bounce it back to my hand to play it from my hand. I think Dourport Mage allows us to do a ton of that. As well as whenever one or more creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, we draw a card. So if we were to blink a creature or bounce a creature, Dourport's going to draw us a card as well. So it's a great value for what we're trying to do with it. Experiment 12 is the first of the older face-down creatures we're going to be adding. It's a disguise creature, so it can be played face-down instead of needing to come down face-down off Simone's ability. And then whenever it or another creature's turned face-up, you put counters on it equal to its power. This is a brutal ability that's just going to help us get bigger creatures out there in the mid game and make sure we can start swinging at our opponents and attacking. Ghostly Flicker is a perfect example of a blink spell that can blink a permanent by exiling it and bringing it back in. That can do a lot of things for us. It says exile two target artifacts, creatures, or lands. So ideally, right, we're going to be blinking the face down creatures, right, and flipping them face up, or flipping or exiling a creature that's already face up that we want another ETB battle, another enters ability or something like that. But this can also target lands, meaning if you really need 2 land triggers and all you have is your Ghostly Flicker and 3 mana, you can blink those 2 lands, bring them back in, get 2 more landfall triggers, more Zimone triggers, more of our other landfall triggers. You can kind of see the flexibility of a card like Ghostly Flicker when you start to look at all the situations you can use it in. Kadama's Reach for just a teeny bit more ramp. I think it's important to make sure we're ramping. I think the deck does a very good job at it, but I still like adding a teeny bit more. I really like land ramp when we can do it, because it means we just have more mana every turn. And Kadama's Reach basically puts 1 on the battlefield and puts 1 into our hand, and if we haven't played our land that turn, that means we can basically play 2 lands for 3 mana. So that's always nice. Lotus Cobra is an all-star of landfall decks. Whenever a land comes in, you add a mana of any color. This means that even if that land comes in tapped, we're still getting a mana for it. And this ability can just keep getting us mana turn over turn. I love Lotus Cobra, and it's so good at what it does. A card that I really like in this deck, and I think it'll get better the more you try it and the more situations you see it in, is Overlord of the Hauntwoods. This is a 5 mana 6/5 enchantment creature. It says whenever it enters or attacks, you make a tapped colorless land token named everywhere with every basic land type. So you're eating a land whenever it comes in or attacks. Now, Hauntwoods is fun because instead of paying 5 mana or flipping it, right, with another ability, you can also from your hand pay 3 mana and bring it down as just an enchantment with 4 time counters on it. At the start of every end step, you take a time counter on of it, and then when they run out, it becomes a creature again. But what I like about Hauntwoods the most is you can either play it yourself, or you cheat it in off of Zimone, flip it face up and attack, and just start making these extra land tokens every turn, triggering more Zimone, triggering more landfall. Like, to me, it just doesn't seem like a downside at all to get more of these land tokens that have all of our types, and they're just going to be great, right? More landfall triggers, more landfall triggers, more landfall triggers, more. I think that's the whole point of a landfall deck, is you want more landfall triggers, more triggers from everything, not just from one thing. Making that land triggers every single landfall trigger we have, and just allows us to cascade through the board really well. Planar Incision is another one of these blink spells. Artifact or creature, blink it and put it back on it, and it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. If it's a creature, I think actually an artifact would still get a +1/+1 counter, but it wouldn't do anything. But the point is, take a face down creature if we want, bring it back in, or again, like we talked about before, take a regular creature and blink it. The one thing I want to talk about with blinking that I didn't talk about before is another reason why blink spells are important is, let's say my opponent plays a single target removal spell like Swords to Plowshares on one of my creatures. I can actually use Planar Incision to blink that creature and put it back on the battlefield, and it's going to get around that Plowshares because the original target for that Plowshares is no longer there. So at minimum, we could use this to protect Zimone from a removal spell if we had to. Next to it, Printlifter Ruse is one of my other favorite disguise cards we're bringing in. Whenever it or another creature's turn face up, you make a 0/0 ooze and put counters on it equal to the number of other creatures you could draw. This is a great ability because we're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger oozes. They're going to become a threat to our opponent as we're doing all the other stupid things we're doing. Anyway, spending a couple bucks there on 6 from Modern Horizons 3, a card I really like. Whenever it attacks, you can mill 3. Put a land from among them in our hand. We're not going to do that as much. I think we like the bottom part of 6 even more. As long as it's your turn, non-land permanents in your graveyard have Retrace, meaning that we can play them back out of our graveyard. If I recall correctly, it's by pitching a land card to do it. So we can get them back out of our graveyard if someone destroys one of our permanents, or we have to, let's say we do a Manifest Shred and we get really 2 good things, but we have to pick one, then 6 can help us get that other thing back from our graveyard. Fairy's Time Twist, very similar to Planar Incision and Ghostly Flicker, another blink target. Tireless Provisioner, another well-loved landfall trigger. Whenever a land comes in, you can make a food or a treasure, so life or mana, whichever you choose to take. Uro's another great one that's not in the deck, but I think makes a ton of sense. Mostly because we can get around its escape. So it says whenever it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. And it says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Then you put a land from your hand on the battlefield. Well, if I Manifest Shred this in face down, that ETB trigger will never go off, right? Because it's already on the battlefield. Now when I flip it up, now when Uro attacks, I can still gain 3 life and draw a card and do the land fun, but I'll never have to worry about escaping it because, or sacrificing it because it'll already have entered. And then if it ever leaves the battlefield, I can escape it back, right? And get its ability again. Uro just feels like a great 6/6 body that's going to gain you life, draw your cards, and get lands down for more triggers for Zimone to flip things over. Vannifar from Murder's Call Manor makes a ton of sense here. Beginning of combat, you're going to choose one. You can cloak a card from your hand, so you're going to take a card from your hand, put it face down as a 2/2 creature, and then that will be able to be flipped up by Zimone later if you want to. Or you can put a counter on every colorless creature you control. That means any face down creature you have is going to get a +1/+1 counter. And since Zimone wants to be putting at least one down every turn, or other abilities can help us by putting multiple colorless creatures down right on a turn, this is going to just make sure those creatures get counters on them. And remember, when you turn a creature face up, it doesn't leave the battlefield, meaning those counters stay on them. And then one of my favorite of the morph creatures we get to bring in is Vesuvan Shapeshifter. It says when it enters the battlefield or is turned face up, you may choose another creature on the battlefield. If you do, until it's turned back face down, it becomes a copy of that creature, except it has the beginning of our turn, we can flip it back face down. I like this a lot because if we cheat it in with Zimone and flip it back up for either its morph cost or another ability, we pick another creature on the battlefield and it becomes a copy of it with that ability. It doesn't have to just be our creatures. It could be anybody's creature. And this is great because if you want to copy your opponent's commander, you could. You can do a lot of things with Shapeshifter. And then if we ever want to change, well, we just flip it back down and then flip it back up and copy another creature. I like abilities like this. They can be very, very good because they can be so many things at once depending on when you need them. And I think that's an important thing to think about in our game, where you can run into so many different situations. But as far as what I removed, I'm sure I'm going to get some hate from some people, but I'm just going to talk through what cards I removed. And like I said, if there's any cards I really like, why I would bring them back in. I think Biomass Mutation makes a ton of sense in the deck, making our creatures a bit bigger for some mana. I just think I'd rather have more landfall triggers and get some more synergy rather than a card that I think is still objectively good. Love Cackling Carnivore. It hurt to take this card out because it's such a good card. And if I can think through the rest of the cards that I took out, it might be one I would look to bring back in, because making a copy of a creature you control is such a good ability, especially when we have things like Avenger of Zendikar running around and being able to get it again with Flashback. I really like this card, and it would be one I'd be looking to put right back in after a couple tests to see what, the effect maybe didn't work as well as I thought it would. Explosive Vegetation I took out for the Kadama's Reach. I just like it being a little bit cheaper, just that way we can play it. But I can understand if you'd want to bring the Vegetation back in for a little bit more ramp. Tanuki is a card I don't hate the idea of, getting that channel and make a basic land. But I don't know. To me, there's better 6/5s I'd rather have in the deck for this. I really like this channel utility, but I think I just talked myself out of it for other cards. Kefnet is a card that makes a ton of sense with Kian. It just makes no sense with Zimone. Like, these two cards I think are really good and they work really well with each other. It would work really well in this Kian deck if you choose to make your Zimone deck into this, but neither of these, in my opinion, play very well with Zimone. Yes, Kian is a great card in this ability right here, allowing you to play things at flash speed, but I can think of a lot of other 4-mana things that help my landfall or face-down strategies a lot more, and for that reason I took them out. Again, I like the Zealot, being able to pay mana to turn things face up, but I think Zimone is more often not just going to flip them up herself as we're trying to play multiple land drops. I like Rashmi a lot. It's a card I really enjoyed. I've used in other decks. I just don't see it here, at least to my knowledge, because we're not caring about the top card of our deck like we are in that Kian list if we did that. And then Temple of the False God is just a land that I don't love. I think it's a trap for a lot of decks. Our deck, it's not going to be that big of a problem, but I'd rather play another fetch land like Fabled Passage that can get me multiple land drops at a turn. But let's do a playtest or two of the deck with the $50 of cards added and removed, so we can see how a deck like this would run. We got a 3-mana land, or 3-mana 3-lander with Trail of Mystery, Awaken the Seas. Great to see that get a reprint in this Precon. That Experiment 12, and Soaring. So we got a good start. Could potentially see a turn to Awaken the Seas or Zimone, depending on what we draw here. We draw a Scootsworm. That's A-okay. I think I still like getting Soul Ring down here turn 1. Might cause some ire from the table, depending on who you're playing with. Soul Ring is always one of those cards that everybody likes to point out on turn 1. Here we are, turn 2, we see a Myriad Landscape. I don't hate the world where we just Scoot Swarm into one of these other lands to get an insect. Chamber I could do, and then be able to still play a land next turn. It would look awkward with just one land on the battlefield, but we still go up, right, a mana. Myriad Landscape could be something we could do next turn to get a couple extra land drops as well in the future. I kind of like the idea of just doing the Growth Chamber. We have to pick a land up for the Growth Chamber, but that gets us an insect token. And now we're off to the races on having a ton of value. That is a turn 3, right, start to Scoot Swarm, or turn 2. Here on turn 3, now we'll get the... I'm trying to think. If we could play Zimone first, right, and then play this Forest, but I think I'm going to play the Myriad Landscape. That's going to trigger Scoot Swarm, getting us another insect, and then we're going to go ahead and Manifest Dread, seeing a Forest and Whisperwood Elemental. Whisperwood Elemental is a fun one, and has some fun workarounds with Zimone and some other cards I've seen on other playthroughs of this Precon. But beginning your end step, manifest the top card of your library, so put it face down as a 2/2. And then we can sack it to give all other face down or face up non-token creatures the ability to manifest when they die. So this is going to come in face down. Now, if we could get another landfall trigger, we could turn it face up. But that's okay. We'll get it face up next turn. Again, we could make the attacks with Scoot Swarm if we want to. I think otherwise we're in good shape. Here on turn 4, we see a Reliquary Tower. Thunderbolt Bailoff is a great card to give your board +2/+2 in haste. I like the idea of getting Rhythmacies down this turn if I can, just because it actually comes down as a land that can tap for 2 mana, and then in the future will turn into a creature. The only problem is if I go into Rhythmacies right now, I can't use the mana right because it comes in tap, but it does come in as a land, meaning it will trigger Zimone. So I think I would tap the Growth Chamber and the Soul Ring for Rhythmacies. It's going to come in with 5 slumber counters on it. That is a landfall trigger, so we're going to Manifest Dead. AC and Shigeki, both great cards. I think I'd rather have AC. AC is a great card, allowing us to draw cards when lands come in and play extra lands. I love it. And then, see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 1 mana left. Now I can play that Forest. And I was going to say, I kind of want to flip up, I do kind of want to flip up AC here, because now I can play an extra land, right? Play the Reliquary Tower, and now I can flip up Whisperwood Elemental, right? Because on my second and third lands, I'm getting that. Scoot Swarm is just going to make me 2 more insects. I'm not at 6 lands yet for its ability. Even though this is a land, I still only have 5. Now the next land from AC draws me a card, which is AOZ. That's great to see. Now we can potentially get some threats going to our opponents. Make an attack here if we want this turn, but otherwise we'll go to end step and Whisperwood Elemental manifests a Wilderness Reclamation, which actually untaps all of our non-land, all of our lands on each opponent's turn, which is cool. We didn't cast any spells after the... We didn't cast any spells after playing the lands. I guess we could have. We could have played the Trail of Mysteries, but we missed it whenever we play a spell. Slumber counters come off of the Rhythmacies. But we'll go to our next turn. And so now we've got another set of, right? We got another set of Zimone triggers that we want to make happen. Right, we don't have 2 lands to play, but that's okay. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. I love the idea of getting AOZ down before we do anything else, just so we can get a bunch of plants down. But it also makes an equal amount of sense to play a land before it, so we get an extra plant. Right, there's a lot of ways we can look at doing this. I also want to try to crack Myriad Landscape if I can, right, to get a lot of options. But we'll play the Avenger of Zendikar. This is going to take a slumber counter off of Rhythmacies. This is going to make me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants, right? Then I'm going to play the Drowned Temple. So my intention is to leave these two untapped. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right, for the AOZ. We'll play the Drowned Temple. This is going to be a landfall trigger, putting a counter on all of our plants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going to make me a copy of Scootsworm. AC is going to draw me a card. And then we'll do Zimone Manifest Dread. I did it last just to see if I could get some more fun things. And, well, that didn't come in handy for me because I flipped 2 lands or two spells, unfortunately. So we need to try to potentially find a way to bounce them because we can't turn them over since they're spells. Play an extra land this turn. I just don't have any in my hand. That's 3 mana, so I could Beanstalk to get another land and flip the Reclamation over if I want to. That would put another counter on all my plants and draw me another card. Maybe I hit something good there. So let's do that. Let's Beanstalk on the adventure. Search my library for a basic land card and put on the battlefield tapped. We'll go get a island just to get ourselves some more blue mana involved. Another counter off Frequencies. Another counter on all of our plants. We're going to make 2 Scootsworm copies this time since there's 2 of them. AC is going to draw us a card. And then we will flip the Wilderness Reclamation up with Zimone. Now our lands would have... We did get our land for the turn. So it was 1... Which I think we played the... Did we play the land this turn? I think we already played a land this turn. If I didn't, I think then I missed the opportunity just to build the board even more. But that's A-okay. That does come in tapped off the Beanstalk Giant. Oh, it comes in untapped. Oh, well. We'll just move to end step, manifest the top card, which is a forest, so we can flip that over at any time now. And we could have attacked this turn with the AC and the Whispering Wilds if we wanted to. But otherwise on turn 5, look at this mess that we have. Go into turn 6. I mean, we really just want to start casting more things to turn Frequencies back into a creature. But really all we need to do is Thunderfoot Bailiff, right? Giving all of these guys trample and making them a little bit bigger. And then just play a bunch of lands to get these plants bigger, and I think we're in good shape. I'm not going to play that out, but I think that would be where I would go from here just for the sake of time. But let's get into playtest number 2. I think it's important to see where an end of a game plan goes, but I think you really also want to practice the start of the game, because that can be kind of the hardest part sometimes. So we're keeping a 4-lander with Deathmist Raptor. It has Megamorph, so you can turn it face up if it's face down with its own ability. And whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's in your graveyard, you can bring it back to the battlefield face up or face down. Augur of Autumn for a way to potentially play some things off the top, and that Retreat to Coralhelm to be a landfall trigger. You can tap or untap a creature or scry one. I like it. Not a bad hand. We're probably looking at turn 4 Zimone, but that's a-okay. We're going to get the party started. Turn 1, we'll get that tap land in there. Turn 2, I think we'll just play the Temple of Mystery and scry 1. Ooh, Doorport Mage. I like that. We'll keep that on top. Turn 3, I kind of like the idea of the Augur of Autumn, so we can start seeing what's on top, which is Thunderfoot Bailiff. And it says as long as we have 3 or more creatures with different powers, we can play creatures off the top, but we can play lands off the top at any time. So that's a nice ability. So we'll draw for turn 4, seeing a forest off the top. It is good to know that we can play the forest off the top. I guess we're just gonna miss. Zimone's trigger this turn no matter what. So we'll just. Does it make more sense to get anything down before it? No, I think we just play the forest off the top and get Zimone, another land on the top, but we don't have a second land drop. And we'll just kind of keep building, right? Slower hand, right? Didn't get that great Soul Ring start like we did last time, but we have a lot of great pieces in hand that we can work towards. Turn 5, we see an island on top, so that might be fun to play. Let's play the island off the top, and we're going to manifest Dread for a Team or War Shaman or a Beast within. Team or War Shaman says when it enters, you manifest top card. If a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. So we'll put that in face down. Fighting is not a bad mechanic, something that we could take advantage of later. Still got 5 mana. Bonnie Paul is 6. So I'm thinking what? Dowerport Mage. Now we can actually play the top card of our library because we have Coven, but I think I'll just do that. Coralhelm plus Dowerport Mage Get some more value. Dowerport can start bouncing things back to our hands like we could have. I guess we could have technically kept this Beast Within instead if we wanted to bin the War Shaman, and we could have gotten the Beast Within back, but I already made my decision there. Top card is a Zimone's Hypothesis. So we'll go to the next turn. Top card is an island. This allows us to put a counter on a creature, then choose even or odd, and return each creature with the power of the chosen type to their hands. We've got 2, 3, 2, and 1. So, we could put a counter on Zimone and call even and bounce everything that's not, back. We'd have options there. Let's play the forest or the island off the top. This is going to manifest Dread into a forest or a command tower. I guess we'll just take the command tower. Top card is Experiment 12, and we still have 3 different powers, so we could play Experiment 12 off the top for just 4. At this point, I was thinking either Bonnie Paul or the Experiment 12, but Experiment 12 would be nice for when we start flipping up more creatures. I missed my way to get another land drop. I guess we could have scryed one there, but we already know what's on top. We know that Overlord. Oh, sorry, no, we don't know that that's on top. I apologize. We would have known that the Experiment 12 was on top. I think I would just hard cast it. When we start flipping up things, we could take advantage. And then the Dowerport Mage could pick something up if we want to. Maybe if we want to play this command tower, we could pick it up. Otherwise, now we know the Overlord's there. Attack if we want to, but otherwise I think we just move to the next turn and just try to keep getting some good value. So we'll play the Yavimaya Coast. Recommend and Hydra Omnivore is a great creature. When it deals damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. That's going to come in face down. And then I love the Overlord. This allows me to cultivate off the top. Not bad. This allows you to get lands every time it comes in or attacks. You get land tokens, which can still trigger all these landfall abilities. Bonnie Paul could be fun, because if we're going to attack this turn, it could get us another land down. Thunderfoot Bailiff might make sense. Ideally, we could potentially flip. Think about this. If I cast, I have 7 mana, right? If I cast Bonnie Paul, I'm only getting 1 more land this turn. If I cast Hauntwoods, I'm getting 1 more land this turn. Right? I don't think there's any way for me to get more than 1 land. Even Cultivate, right? It's only going to get me 1 land. So we'll play the Hauntwoods. It gets me an Everywhere token, which will allow me to flip something, and I guess I'll flip the Temur War Shaman. This is going to get 4 counters on it because of Experiment 12, and now it'll allow me to fight with creatures when they flip up. Go to combat, we can attack if we want to. This does leave us up enough mana to bring something back to our hand, if we wanted to bounce that command tower back to our hand, or or bounce something else. But I think we're okay for the moment. We'll go 1 more turn here. We know what we're going to draw, which is Cultivate. See what it reveals. Reveals Uro. Uro is something we really, like I said, want to manifest in. So I'll play the Drownyard Temple, and I'm probably just going to manifest that Uro in. I don't really see any reason not to. Especially because we can get around its escape, his escape trigger going off. Alright, so we've got 8 mana to work with. Thunderfoot Bailiff feels great this turn to start attacking, if possible. But I don't have enough. I guess I might. If I go 3 for Cultivate, right? Forest in, Island to hand. That's going to allow me to flip another, right? I'll flip the Command Tower. What was this again? This was the Uro. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. So part of me wants to just do the Thunderfoot Bailiff to take an attack here, right? It's either that or play Bonnie to flip up something like Hydra Omnivore so it can take a big swing this turn. But I think we're kind of at a good space there where we have a tree of decisions, but I think we're where we need to be. So let me know, what do you think of Zimone's $50 upgrade down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion, and I will catch you guys next time.